Good to see folks. And Mike, thank you so much for that really interesting presentation. It's great to follow you. I'm Danielle Allen. I'm the director of the Edmund and Lilly Saffer Center for Ethics at Harvard. I just want to start off by acknowledging what a time of uncertainty and instability this is. I think there's a lot of free-floating anxiety as a result of all the different kinds of geopolitical and political economic events and so forth around the globe. And it's, I think, important that we just acknowledge that context as we engage in this conversation about technology and tech ethics. The work many of us here are trying to do on tech ethics couldn't be more important. It's closely connected to the instability and all the sources of anxiety. And I believe also where we need to do work if we're going to get back to a place where we can actually support healthy human societies and human flourishing. So today I'm going to be talking about a paper called How AI Fails Us. I was lucky to work on with a group of people in developing this paper. My co-authors include Divya Siddharth at Microsoft, who is a technologist, computer sciences are focused, Daron Acemoglu at MIT, who's an economist, Kate Crawford, whom I'm sure you also know from the world of Microsoft research and technology, James Evans, Michael Jordan, and Glenn Weil, so combinations of sociologist and physicist and economist. And I go through that list of those of us who helped develop this paper, How AI Fails Us, because the paper itself, the work we did, instantiates multiple intelligences at work. I take that phrase, multiple intelligences, from the work of Howard Gardner. He's an educational theorist and has had a great influence in the world of education and helping people recognize that different human beings bring actually quite different kinds of intelligences to the table. Often for any of our biggest challenges and problems, what we really need is to figure out how to knit different kinds of intelligences together. In our paper, we call the same idea plural intelligences, and I will be saying more about that. It's really at the core of what I want to share today, a question of how we rethink technology, the work of technology development, if we start from a picture of plural intelligences rather than from a sort of speculative conception of singularity. But for our paper writing, sort of taken together, all of our different intelligences, our plural or multiple intelligences, working in complementary fashions, formed what might also be called collective intelligence. That's, of course, the theme of this gathering. And so I appreciate the fact that people are trying to sketch collectively precisely what collective intelligence amounts to and how we might better support it. So our group of authors collectively believe that AI is failing us. But what do I mean by that? To answer that, I have to be a lot more specific. AI is used so broadly and so loosely that to say that in itself doesn't really get us very far. At one level, AI is just used as a kind of very general marketing label for anything that people want to sell in the tech space and make it sound innovative and forward-leaning. On the other hand, there is also, of course, artificial general intelligence as a speculative conceptual program. And neither of those two concepts is necessarily in itself that interesting or that worth spending time and critique on. And so what we focus on instead is what we call actually existing artificial intelligence, actually existing artificial intelligence. What we mean by this concept is very specifically the shape of significant investment by power centers in the technology field in artificial intelligence. So we have in mind, for example, the OpenAI project at Microsoft, DeepMind, Alphabet, and Facebook AI research. And the important point here is that the just scale of investment by power centers in a paradigm designated as AI is driving the creation of a paradigm of political economy and a paradigm of political authority and decision-making. So it's this actual existing AI that we believe is failing us and that we offer a critique of. Just to give you a sense of the scale of investment, and I'm sure you're all attuned to this already, Microsoft in a single year invested $1 billion via OpenAI in the development of GPT-3, a large-scale unsupervised language model. And this investment was directed through a staff of approximately 150 employees. So that's one of the largest capital investments ever exclusively directed and controlled by such a small group of people. I mean, that's a hard historical claim to make, but based on the collective understanding of those of us working on the paper, we believe it's one of the largest capital investments ever controlled by such a small group of people. It's similar to the ratio of Soviet investment in 1975 to the number of employees of the state planning agency Gosplan. So the point of seeing the scale of investment, but also the small number of people directing it, is to see how important centralization and control are to the paradigm of actually existing artificial intelligence. So let me just spend a moment here on the mission statements of those key power centers, so that you have them kind of front of mind. So from OpenAI, OpenAI's mission is to ensure that artificial general intelligence, by which we mean highly autonomous systems that outperform humans at most economically valuable work, benefits all of humanity. Okay, so that's the OpenAI mission statement. Then DeepMind, solve intelligence, then use that to solve everything else. And from Facebook AI research, human level AI is the sort of the tagline for that. Now, a couple of key concepts, conceptual and practical commitments, are lodged in those mission statements and shape the work emerging from these power centers. And those key concepts and practical commitments are human competition. You could hear that comparison to humans in those statements. Autonomy, the notion that the technology should be operating separately from people, and centralization. And so let me just share a little bit more specifically what we mean by pulling out these concepts. So with regard to human competition, this is the first shared commitment in the target of achieving general intelligence. And it's really defined by comparison to the aim of surpassing some conception of generalized human level cognitive abilities. So the definition of intelligence as a single thing to be solved, as in the DeepMind statement, strongly suggests that intelligence singularly understood is a well-formulated problem. And given that humans are usually described as intelligent, it also implies that outperforming some sort of singularly understood human intelligence is at least a necessary, if not sufficient, condition for solving intelligence. And our view is that this gets the basic concept of intelligence wrong. It also is diminishing of human intelligence, rather in seeking to replace human intelligence rather than to complement human intelligence. So come back to that in a moment. Just to define the autonomy concept for a moment. The second shared commitment is that machines will be independent from human input and oversight to the maximal degree possible. And measures of success in achieving intelligence are predicated on demonstrating this autonomy. But the important point is that the autonomy is never complete. There's always a few people, technical elites, left steering the system. And as a result, when you put human competition and autonomy together, you get that third commitment to centralization. And that's really again captured by that ratio of 150 people steering that $1 billion investment. So centralization we can think of as the practical consequence of this agenda of human competition and autonomy. And the challenge then that we face is that we do have a political economy and political philosophy that are already transforming the world in the direction of this human replacing, human displacing centralization. We see the impacts on labor markets. Economists and our paper present the material on the data showing the ways in which over time, for a period of time, technology was displacing labor, but then also replacing labor with new opportunities. And often, in the sort of early part of the 20th century, where the folks who were displaced, that in terms of people with lower levels of education, the jobs that also came in replacement forms also tracked their level of education. Now, of course, as you all know, we have a situation where as jobs are displaced, to the degree that there's replacement, and there's not as much replacement, it's replacement with jobs at a higher level of educational demand. And consequently, there is a sort of category of people who are simply being displaced. That is also connected not just to a diminishment in productivity increases over time for aggregate economies, it's also connected to experiences of alienation, loss of self-worth, which are the fuel for political resentment and political instability. So a degradation of human capacities, which is built into the goals of actual existing artificial intelligence, are by definition destabilizing and politically problematic. Of course, there's also the ways in which centralized algorithms have functioned to produce division and dissension and disinformation through social media algorithms, the way those have fueled things like genocide in Myanmar. So the point is that this centralized effort to displace humans and to overcome sort of humans at a core level is already generating a meaningful transformation of the world's political economy and a meaningful transformation of the world's political systems. At the moment, in terms of geopolitical debates, there's a lot of sort of discussion about the relationship between China and the West, for example, and what is the sort of durability of democratic forms of governance. But the fact of the matter is, it's not actually clear that's the right question to be answering. The significance of the investment in actually existing artificial intelligence and the embrace by Western societies at the moment of that paradigm actually mean that it's entirely possible that centralized planning, in effect, are already becoming the dominant paradigm in all parts of the world. So that's really the kind of provocative question that we're putting on the table for everybody in this paper about how AI is failing us. So against this picture, we offer a new vision. And it's a new vision for technology, but it's also a new vision for a political economy and for a political philosophy. And that new vision rests, as I've already indicated, on the concept of multiple intelligences or plural intelligences or plurality, as we sometimes argue in this paper and others associated with it. And we make the case that one of the most important things we all need to do right now in the technology space is to develop new approaches, new paradigms for technologies based on this concept of plurality, where the goal is, in fact, to support the development of plural technologies. And these are technologies that would not replace humans, not compete with humans, but complement humans and also enable the maximal activation of the power of our multiple intelligences. The goal, in other words, is to achieve a much more powerful collective human intelligence that is increasing, expanding on, fully activating the value of what human beings bring with their multiple intelligences to the table. To activate multiple human intelligences in this way requires forms of coordination and decision-making that are themselves supportive of pluralism. That means, therefore, also supportive of democratic practice and democratic modes of decision-making, decentralized approaches to decision-making, and then the technologies that support decentralization. So what I want to do is just name a little bit more definitely and read the definitions of the core concepts that we are offering for plurality and plural technologies as an alternative paradigm, and then say a couple of words, I know I'm getting close to time, on what some of this already looks like in practice. So in terms of core concepts, we focus on complementarity, participation, and mutualism. So by complementarity, we mean that technology should complement and cooperate with existing intelligent ecosystems, not replace them. Technology should broaden the surface area of complementarity across individuals, organizations, and systems, and allow for ever more networked evolution. So then second principle, participation. This is the principle and commitment that intelligence is collective, not autonomous. Technology should work to facilitate the social nature of intelligence, and in particular to facilitate deliberation on and participation in setting outcomes in equal measure to driving the achievement of outcomes. So focused as much on how we are choosing our goals and targets and deciding how to implement them as on measuring those outcomes. The third principle is mutualism. And by this, we mean decentralized heterogeneous approaches under the umbrella of digital plurality can benefit on and can build on and benefit from each other. Technologies evolve in interaction with each other and social, political, and economic institutions and the ecology. So let me now, again, as I come to conclusion here, just share some concrete examples of where this sort of work is already happening. So if we're thinking about that first lane, really focusing on complementarity. We can pay attention to work that aims to develop intelligences that are unrelated to human intelligence. So AlphaGo would be an example. Or there are examples that perform well in areas where humans are known to be weak. So for example, work on protein folding with AlphaFold. Or you can think about work that complements and collaborates with humans, for example, optimizing on metrics of human complementarity, as is done with cyborg technologies and brain-computer interfaces. Even this simple, I shouldn't say simple, but even this technology of Zoom that we're so comfortable with is complementing. It's not replacing our existing capacities for communication, but adding to our communicative resources, for example. Thank you for the time check. I appreciate that. I will leave it there actually in terms of providing some specific examples, but the point is that what we're calling plural technologies based on a concept of multiple or plural intelligences and a commitment to plurality in terms of how we are bringing people into participation. There are already examples of technology work of this kind. So our view is it's time for us to sort of shine a bright light on those examples, designate a field, and start to see if we can drive investment into this alternative paradigm as a way of countering the centralizing and ultimately human degrading effects of actually existing artificial intelligence. Thank you very much.